Yeah, I think you're working with belonging, and this is a topic that, you know, as particularly as a researcher, I find very interesting. Okay. So, whenever I think about a topic, I first ask, how do you define it? That's the question I have in my mind. How do you define belonging? And, you know, the second question would be, how do you measure this? How do you think about that? In terms of how do you evaluate this across different contexts?
Okay, so I'll answer your second question first, which is to say that I'm a newbie researcher.
Okay.
I've come back to school at a mature age, and I've taken a break because I've been in school for 2 years and I need some energy for the final push.
Replenish.
But belonging, yes, belonging is an interesting concept, and I come to it through my lived experience. But in terms of your first question, the definition of belonging, I think as a concept, it has existed, but is emerging into belonging or belongingness, as some academics refer to it. And I think in its earlier iterations, when people were trying to work out what makes people feel a sense of well-being in the workplace, you would find words used like satisfaction, contentment, commitment, fulfillment,
Or engagement, things of
or
that sort.
engagement, indeed. But from the management consulting perspective, and they've been doing more research on this, I mean, more recent research on this, I think, and again, you have geographical responses to belonging. It's huge as a concept in the US and the UK, but not so much in Germany, which is why I thought it would be an interesting place to do research on, given the dynamics, the complex dynamics in Germany. And so, from that perspective, you hear words like connection, care, value, respect, contribution, community, security. All this to say, when you put them together, there is some continuity in terms of connection, the feeling of care, the feeling that you can make a contribution and you will be heard and your contribution will be valued, and that you can make demands of the system or the workplace that you find yourself in. Okay, so that's one thing. But the other is that it's seen as an outcome.
Absolutely.
You put these things in, you stir, and outcomes belonging, as opposed to, belonging being an input, such as respect.
This is the strange thing that I see from an organizational researcher's standpoint, because I get called in every now and again to different companies because they'll see that, the belonging scores, what they would call their belonging scores, will be down, and like, oh, people don't feel like they belong here. And the thought is, oftentimes they will say, we've done a campaign to say that you belong. And as if the declaration of it is the creation of it, and it's a weird dynamic that people have in terms of understanding that, this is an outcome over time based off of, what have you created for these people to exist in that space. But then there's also this issue of the goals of belonging in an organization. I almost never advocate for anybody to ask the question directly. I think it's a useless question as such when you say, do you belong in this company? It's a weird thing in that sense because people have different perspectives on that. I work with international organizations and a lot of companies, a lot of different languages. As it translates, there even just with the connotation of it, there's this idea of ownership, and even in English, there's an idea of ownership in that sense. So this is this undercurrent of either the work belongs to you or you belong to the work, and people have a different feeling of that. So it's a thing of they don't feel that that should be the nature of the relationship that you have with your job, and you'll get that pushback of, well, no, but I'm okay with that. I don't, belonging is not what I'm going for. It's not a goal for them. But that's, once again, it's the semantics of things. You have to understand, what are we actually going for? So I typically toss out the word, and then we'll look at those things that we're trying to measure within it instead. But I definitely think that there are so many different perspectives about what the work relationship should be. A lot of folks are perfectly content with a transactional relationship in their job, and they don't have to feel like this is a place that they've joined a cult per se. And I think that is something that people have as a notion of belonging as well, where they feel like it's a cult like thing, or you joined a family, or you joined these kind of deeper relational things, and for them it's transactional. So they will say, maybe not so much so with that whole belonging notion, but yet that's okay for them. So I think honestly, it's an important thing to really kind of get down to what exactly are the goals that people have in terms of what they expect that relationship to be or that dynamic to be within their workplace. And then, of course, evaluating whether or not they have those expectations met. So I love that you're talking about things like, can you change a place? Do you have the ability to, the power, some kind of authority in some ways? Are you listened? Are you listened to? Are you respected? Those are valuable questions to ask. Do you feel like you can be a part of yourself? You can bring aspect. Do you have to hide portions of yourself? And that's something where people can have different expectations as well for these type of things. So there are all kinds of aspects that go into belonging that as a researcher I find fascinating, largely because I understand there are very different expectations of what a positive or targeted outcome should be for that. It is an outcome, but what's the targeted outcome? And that's going to differ for different people on the different sub metrics that you're going to measure on this. So it's, yeah, I can't wait to read what you come out with, I have to say.
No
Uh,
pressure, Laura, please. No pressure.
I'm
No,
going to be fascinated. I'm going to be looking into this.
no pressure at all.
No pressure at all. No,
No,
but like I
no.
said, there are so many different ways that people define this, and there's so many different ways that people have expectations around it.
Look, I think it's
You know.
interesting because, as you say, different cultures
Mm-hmm.
have different expectations of what a workplace environment
Mm-hmm.
is. So that's
Yeah.
one. And then on the societal level, we
Mm-hmm.
also come in with our own complexities and baggage. And so for some people, and then remember, because you've coached and you've done all these assessments, we're all different.
Mm-hmm.
So some people think they need, come into the workplace needing, you just talked about as a coach, that you needed to be relational. Okay, so imagine you in the workplace or someone with a similar profile to you. That individual might need, but have a higher need for a sense of belongingness, in
Mm-hmm.
the workplace, versus the next person who is, it's a job, it pays the bills, which allows me to, carry out the responsibilities that I have, or it allows me to afford a certain lifestyle
Mm-hmm.
and to pay for my expensive hobby, or it allows me to express myself professionally. I don't want to be your best friend. I want to come in, do what I need to do, and get out. So I think, yes, what is the goal? Why do you want people to feel like they belong? And most organizations will want to, they'll want a happier workplace because, if employees are more highly enthused about going into work and the work that they do, that translates into productivity. And who doesn't want, more and better of whatever it is, that we're doing? And so there is a bottom line concern about belonging. If you feel like you belong, we get the best out of you. You give your best.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wins. And then the Machiavellian, capitalistic, well, we want more, and in order to get more, we have to ensure that you feel like you belong. So you belong. You know.
Yeah. I think about the other side of this, like I don't know, since I've lived in Finland, I think I've started to embrace this work-life separation to a certain degree. Yep.
Okay.
And when I was living in the Bay Area, I was at Stanford, and some people that I was collaborating with and working with, they were at some of the bigger name companies out in the Bay. I'm not going to call them out, but they would talk about, oh, it's great. I love working there because they have the food there, so you can get every meal provided and catered, and there's a nap room, so you can sleep there, and you can, all these kind of things. And it was so that way people felt like they never had to go home, and that was their whole lives. And it was something that struck me as like, yeah, they feel like they belong, but is there like should you, like there's a certain point where you have to start saying like, who belongs to what at this point,
Laura, isn't this an American thing? I mean, being in
Mm,
Europe again, because
mm,
I worked in the UK for a couple of years, and I remember this very clear separation
mm,
between work and personal life
yeah,
and holidays. And I had worked in the US previously,
mm,
where, it was just assumed that you lived to work. And then I'm
mm,
back in Europe and I've been here for 2 years now. And again, you see the work life separation. So, being as we're speaking in the summer, whenever you connect with a person, they are asking you about their summer vacation or they're telling you that they're on vacation. You don't
mhm.
hear that. And so, from the European perspective, we make fun of the US.
This is definitely
You
laughable in
know,
terms of
you've
how
got 2 days
that
of
is.
leave, 1 day of sick leave, and you know and that's that, and
I'm
you
laughing
work.
so I don't cry. Okay, it's
Yeah, and then you work, you'll be working from your grave,
mm,
and that's the American way.
mm,
And so a workplace where you can take a nap, I
mm,
think within the European context would be really odd. In fact, Europe has laws against how much work a person can does, when you can reach them,
yeah,
when you can't reach them, to ensure that the separation between work and personal life is very clear, and it's a hard boundary.
yeah,
And burnout is accepted here. It is a reason not to work, and you will be looked after if you need burnout leave. And your doctor will prescribe that you go somewhere to rest and heal and recuperate from your burnout.
yeah,
Whereas in the US, it's a badge of honor how many burnouts you've had or how hard you work and what time you woke up in the morning to get some paper in, and your boss called you, at 2 o'clock needing something at 7, and you said, yes, boss, and you delivered, and, you're proud.
I've been there before, and these are things where I had to do a lot of unlearning when I came to Europe, particularly when I took my maternity leave. And then I got struck with this reality of in Finland, you can, at that point, you could take up to 3 years maternity leave. So it was very doable in that sense. But I found it to be a really odd scenario because then you start thinking about who are you without your work? Who are you at that point? I had to go through all this reevaluation of things, and I was thinking, so why do I work? Why do I feel the need to work? I'm like, well, you feel the need to work so that way you have resources to take care of your family, and so that way you have money to be able to spend time with the people that you love. And then I had to pause and realize that wait a second, as it's set up right now, my family is going to be taken care of financially, and I have the time and the resources to spend with them. Wait a second, that obviates the whole work situation for that time period. But it took like coming to that realization that no, it's actually okay to rest. It's actually okay to be able to pause, and yes, I still had value, and and I still had an identity without having that, the business card with my name on it for that time period. Mind you, I still, got an MBA and like started a company during my maternity leave. But like that's a me thing. But I gotta. It was slow learning. It was slow learning. But I got there eventually. Eventually, I started to realize that there was some value to a break. Um, but yeah, I think it's something where you definitely have to, understand that it's not the definition of a person, your productivity. And that's not what I grew up with currently. That's not what I grew up with in the States, to be honest. But luckily you grew up elsewhere. I'm glad you're more psychologically healthy than I am. That there you go. I appreciate
Yeah, well, look, I don't
that.
think I don't think psychological health is a destination. I think it's a journey.
Of course.
And sometimes we meander, sometimes we turn back on ourselves,
Mm,
sometimes we go forward,
mm,
sometimes we, take a luxury break, sometimes we, the car crashes and, you have to, ring for the rescue people to come and get you. It's a
mm.
journey.
It's a journey.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly am grateful that I have all these multicultural experiences.
Mm,
And so there's a different kind of code switching that takes place, when you're not sending emails out of hours, when you're coaching clients to recognize that, a person seeing an email at 2 o'clock in the morning is not a good look and sends, whether intentionally or unintentionally, isn't quite the message you want to be sending to people about what healthy looks like and what respect and valuing of your people looks like. Yeah.
That's interesting. So I think about, some of the lessons I've had to learn